30th. And this is the November policy meeting. We're having it in October because we won't be here next week.
Okay.
So we have policy back on the agenda today, policy and regulation number 5111.
Correct.
There's an area that we needed to clarify for the
Correct.
public, and Dr. Chamley will lead us.
Yes, I would be happy to. So at the prior policy meeting, we went through policy and regulation 5111, which is the eligibility of resident and non-resident students. It is mandatory, and we went ahead with the revisions as per the requirements from Strauss Esme. We overlooked, both Ms. Alvarez and myself did overlook the one area that we needed to make a decision on, the Board of Education needs to make a decision on. And basically, everything has stayed the same, so anybody that wants to go back and rewatch our policy meeting, we don't have to be redundant, they can go ahead and see it. The only difference is, in the past, a child who was anticipating moving to or from the district, we always allowed them to enter the district 60 days before, and all they had to do was show a contract, and we did not require any payment. Now, the opportunity for them to enroll without payment is no longer an option. Now, if we choose this option, we have two ways to go. Either one, the option is we do not allow anyone to live in the district who is not formally part of either renting or a C of O. So if you're buying a home, it would be a certificate of occupancy, and if you're renting, then you would show that you currently rent in our district. So that's the option. Either you're here or we don't take you. If we go with the option that allows them as a non-resident, I'm going to read it directly, and it's page 9 of 11 for anybody that's following along. A non-resident whose parent or guardian anticipates school district residency and has entered a contract to buy, build, or rent a residence in the school district may be enrolled with payment of a tuition rate approved by the executive academy superintendent for a period of time not greater than blank weeks prior to the anticipated date of residency. So we would put in, because it's 60 days, so we would put in 8 weeks, 2 months. We would keep that consistent if you went with this option. And the amount of money would be something that would be based upon the rate as indicated by our NJSA enrollment.
Whatever we end up getting approved by the county superintendent.
So, and I'm just gonna come up with a random number. If it's 10,000, it's 10,000, it's 12,000. And then we would take that amount of money and say, for 2 months, you divide it by 12. And then for those 2 months, you owe us X amount of dollars if you want your child to remain here.
So prorated.
So that's the decision. Part of this option, it continues, is that if a student whose parent or guardian have moved away from the school district on or May 1st,
A 12th grade student.
and 12th grade students, right, so the two different ones. So if you moved on or after May 1st and you're not in 12th grade, and you want to just remain here, whatever grade you are other than 12th, you would still have to also pay, and it would be the same amount of money. And I just came up with a round number of 10. Let's actually use 12, it's easier. So a round number of 12,000, there's 12 months in the year. If you wanted to stay, you would owe for all of May and all of June, you would then owe $2,000 if our rate was 12,000. So if you are in 12th grade, we let you stay longer if it's after February 1st, because we feel you're a senior. So then you'd have to pay for February, March, April, May, and June. That's 5 months. If the rate was 12,000, it would be $5,000. What's put here before this committee is to make a decision to move forward, whether or not you want to continue with the policy as it now stands. The only thing is we don't charge now. So if you want to let them come, they would have to charge, and we would then submit this policy to the county executive superintendent, who would then approve our rate. And of course, we're going to use the rate that's dictated to us. We're not going to come up with just any rate, and we would follow the same guidelines. Or you have the ability to say, no, if you do not live here at the start of school, you don't live here when you come here at the start of school, until you have the rental agreement saying that you are a resident, or until you have the C of O saying that you are a resident, we're not taking your child at all. So that is what is before this committee.
And just on the opposite end, if we say no to allowing the students who are moving out to stay too, that would
Yes,
affect
it's all
them
one.
as well.
From what the way I'm
If we
reading
say
it.
no, it goes
It's
to
no to
both
all.
areas.
No to all.
It's all or nothing.
Correct.
And we have to charge
That's the way I see
tuition.
it.
And is that because that's the change that
That's the change.
State in the
Yes,
state.
the state made that?
Yeah.
So
So-
this is a change made by the State Department of
Not us.
Education to the policy. This is not a Monroe Township change to the policy. I just want to make sure that that's
Thank you.
clear
Mhm.
to everybody that's here. It's clear to the chair, to myself, and to everyone at the table, but I just want
If
to
we
make sure.
scroll up, it'll tell us
So-
if it's mandated or recommended.
Oh, the policy itself.
Yes, there's an M and
It's
bold at
mandated.
the top, which
So
is
there's a
mandated.
mandated policy.
That's why I wanted to bring it back to
Mhm.
policy. I thought
So-
it was important.
Yes.
So conversation now, Ms. Gerby, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. If you want me to begin the conversation, I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. I feel that we should, personally, I think that we should allow students to start. Now, they only have a certain amount of time, right? Is it still the 60 days?
Yes.
So-
To enter it's 60 days and to leave,
Well, we can
it's,
select the time, but we're gonna maintain.
yes,
what
we should
have.
maintain what we've always
We're
had.
gonna keep what we have in place.
Yes.
Right.
So it's
And
60
if
days.
the- if the state, and now we don't charge, and if the state is saying that now we must charge, I think I would rather us charge and allow the students to come than say, no, you can't come at all, because when you think about, especially in the lower grades, in the elementary schools, it's a big difference for a kid to start at one district and switch in a month to another district. I think for continuity of education and for the best interest of a child, allowing them that option to come and pay. And if they so choose not to, they could start in their other district. But I think just saying flat out no, probably after we've been letting students come for free, if we have to charge, we have to charge. That's really the difference is they came now with no charge. Now we're going to charge them. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, now we're not being given the option of the without charging them, so I tend to feel the same way you do, Chrissy, excuse me, I'm sorry, I
It's
jumped
okay.
right in there. You know what, we've had this policy, we let it happen, it just has to be monitored very closely, that's the thing that I think, is the important piece is monitor it closely. If the child is in the school for 3 months and we don't even have a closing date yet, we have to have a bigger conversation, I think, with the
Yeah.
parents. Or I guess they'll have to,
They'd have to
they
withdraw
have
their
to
child.
withdraw their child and go from there. This, with a senior, life happens to people and, sometimes you move, in their senior year, stuff happens. To let them stay, obviously, to me,
But they
is
would
the
have
thing
to
to
pay.
go, but they would have to pay.
Right, so it'd be
So-
February, so just, it would make sense, so if a child was leaving the district and they're any age, if they leave before May 1st, they must leave.
Right.
If they stay May 1st, they would pay for May and June, and if they're a senior, they have from February, which makes sense,
Mhm.
which makes
Where are they
sense.
gonna go?
Right, exactly, so,
By February, they're done. or this-
so once the committee makes a decision moving forward, then it would be on for first read,
Okay.
and we'll take care of that, it was just something that we didn't even say, it was just.
And what happens with the tuition money? Does
Oh,
that
goes
go
into
into a general
general-
fund?
General funds, yes.
General fund.
And we keep up with our residency. I will say that Mr. Selby does a very good job, because he is our residency, not truancy, but he's our residency. So I will say that many parents are upfront
Mhm.
and tell us, and they question. I did get one recently, it was actually last year, a parent said when she was leaving, of a senior child, they reached out. But he's very good with the residency, and, we'd have to keep, I agree, we'd have to say, okay, if they come in with a certain date, we have to know. I wrote 8 weeks, because to me, 60 days, 8 weeks, I know that's, depending on the month, it could be.
Yeah,
9 weeks,
that's
but
generally.
generally. So
Closing
you just
and
have to,
period.
as a committee, make the decision, and then, of course, I'm gonna document it, and then it will be on for first read on the November 15th Board of Education meeting.
So as a committee, we all feel to keep it as is and add the tuition
Tuition.
payment.
Okay.
So there is a process in place already for anyone who's closing on a house.
Mhm.
They do register, they do provide their documentation with, of the closing date and
Mhm.
things. And then we do bring that to the Board of Education for
Mhm.
approval. So I'm sure you see that.
We've
in-
seen a couple
Mhm.
so
So
far.
it doesn't happen as much as it did years and years ago, but it certainly happens now. I would advise keeping that same process in
Mhm.
place.
Except all the
difference
dollar
would
amount,
be, whatever the duration of time that they're with us,
there'll be a cost.
with the change, we would have the,
Right, so and I think that's excellent,
Correct.
Dr. Libby, yes, brought it out, because what we're saying is we already have the protocol in place, the only difference is there'll be a dollar amount associated with it, and I already jotted down that the dollar amount would be the cost, approved by the executive county superintendent.
And this is across all school districts, so.
Then we get
if
the
a
same-
child is
we get the
coming
same
from another
policy
school
alert.
district,
We
they
get the same
will-
policy
When
alert,
they decide to stay, they would have to pay tuition in their district that they're leaving,
Yeah, right.
so.
that's correct, I would imagine,
Mhm.
so. Okay,
Okay,
move on to the next policy.
yes, so we decided to put on the agenda bylaw 0143. Recently, there's been a lot of, at the last board meeting, there was a lot of discussion about this policy, specifically the part about allowing the Jamesburg representative to vote on filling the vacancy. So we thought it'd be a good idea to bring it to the committee for discussion. Why it happens, what has happened in the past, what should we do moving forward?
So I think, as we know, we currently, there was a board approval of a new, board member to take
Yeah.
the vacancy of Ms. Spearman. And I think, what had happened was, this is not a policy nor it is a regulation. I want the public to know that this is a bylaw. So because the bylaw is here, it was then, I'm going to assume, put in by the Board of Education. One of the things, that Ms. Alvarez, had mentioned to me prior to the start of the meeting, and I'll be happy to repeat it for transparency, is that we have a situation where it became a matter of semantics. So it's an understanding of how the bylaw reads.
The statute.
Right, the statute, and then the bylaw is from there. But one of the things that she did say that I would like to repeat, and please correct me if I say anything wrong, is that we had a prior, this is prior to this board of election, this board, nobody was on this board. Prior, we had a situation where there was a vacant seat and the Jamesburg representative actually did vote. So therefore, Ms. Alvarez stated, and she can correct me if I say it wrong, that a previous board didn't even follow their own bylaw. So therefore, it would make sense to entertain whether or not this is a bylaw that we want to remove
Continue.
or continue.
Right.
So that's really why we came to the conversation, or discussion rather. That's how we came to this discussion. Because if it wasn't followed previously, and then this time, the legal advice of Jamesburg's representative, they're conflicting. And then it was dictated in a positive way, I don't mean it as a negative, but it was, we were then, not me, then the Board of Education was then instructed to follow and that the Jamesburg representative could vote, because it went to the county superintendent, because the way, the time frame and so on and
Yeah,
so
so
forth.
the county, when it went to the county superintendent, there was no following of any statute or
Correct.
policy at that point. He just said, I'm not gonna pick the person.
Correct.
You guys are gonna decide, and you're gonna decide with majority rules, meaning everyone got
Correct.
to vote. Prior, the language in the statute, and I don't have it in front of me, I do have it on my phone though, and if I get my phone, I can read it. There's a word in there that says that the sending district may,
In matters of,
in matters of, it was broad. It wasn't
including
that-
but not limited to.
That's the language.
That's the language, so when you
So
do that,
one attorney can interpret it one way, another attorney will interpret it a different way. So there's not really consistency in it.
and Ms.
If I
Alvarez.
if I could add to that, so when we had the vacant seat, there became a debate amongst board members, should or should not Miss Scott vote? And I did what board presidents should do, and I sought out our legal counsel for advice. And what he said to me was, there is not a definitive statement in the statute that gives the sending district the absolute right on that particular item. However, it did say in the areas of governance, including but not limited to. Now, so Miss Scott went and sought a legal opinion from the Jamesburg attorney, and they felt that that line in there gave her the powers to take a vote. Now, it's very important to understand, a board cannot tell anybody they can or cannot vote. A board member themselves has to make that decision. So the nonsense out on social media that I allowed Michelle to vote is ridiculous, because me nor anybody, including the attorney, cannot allow a board member to vote. A board member has their right, when their roll is called, to make a decision. After speaking to our board attorney, and getting the opinion from the Jamesburg attorney, I then went to the county superintendent. They went to the county attorney. They gave me their advice. And then they also said, why don't you check with school boards? So I called up New Jersey school boards and I spoke to their attorney as well.
Hello? We lost him.
We lost you.
The owl is,
The owl is on.
the owl's on.
So while we get her back on, I can read the.
Sure.
Because I found it.
Okay, so if you can hear us, Ms. Gerby, we're gonna read the Ms. Alvarez gonna read the statute, and then you can continue.
While you're getting
While you-
back on. So it's statute number 18A 38-8.1I. Any matter concerning governance of the receiving district board of education, including but not limited to the selection of the board president or vice president, approval of board bylaws, and the employment of professionals or consultants such as attorneys, architects, engineers, or others who provide services to the receiving district board of education.
So what does that mean?
Yes.
Including but not limited to can mean a lot of things, right?
And a lot of things, and it's up to how the
You interpret
board,
it.
this board wants to interpret it and wants to move forward with our bylaw.
I'm not sure if I,
Oh, you came back, good.
Oh, okay. so what I was
You-
saying
we
was,
heard, yeah.
so then when I
School
talked
board.
to school boards, they said to me that they felt that that line in there would give her, the sending district the ability to participate in that vote. What he said to me was, he goes, you should look at other districts and try to find one that had the similar experience where they had a vacant seat and a sending member, and what did they do? And I said, well, I know of one. We did 3 or 4 years ago. And he goes, well, then there you have it. What is the argument? And I said, well, this policy. And he said, well, policy does not trump the statute. So if the understanding is that the statute does afford the sending district the ability to vote in all matters of governance, he goes, then she should be voting on that particular one, and you would need to change your policy accordingly. So that's where we
Yes.
are.
That's where we are now.
So my question is, since this is a bylaw, do we want to look at this? And then I'm trying to see if it's anywhere else. What I just found was
This is the
the
only.
last
bylaw.
line, right? Is that what you found? Did
The
you find
last
anything else?
line, no, yes, that's the only.
Okay, so in the event no candidate receives a majority vote of the remaining board members, a second election shall be conducted between the two candidates receiving the highest number of votes. The representative of the Jamesburg Board of Education is not entitled to vote to fill a vacancy. I believe if we just remove that, I believe. Did you see anything else, Ms. Alvarez? Because I don't want us to miss anything.
Like,
Ms.
we could
Gerby?
either remove it or say will be entitled.
Will be entitled to vote. Oh, maybe that's.
I don't think you should even do that. I think if you're going to give her if you're going to give the rep ability to vote, then you should do it in the I don't know if it's a bylaw or a policy, but in the one
This
that's
is why,
specifically to the sending district.
this is, in this particular one, it's purely 0143. It's 2 pages bylaw, board member election and appointment, and it goes through how they do it. The only place in here
Yeah,
that
no,
it refers to. the sending
Sherry,
district-
I understand that. I'm saying I don't even think that line should have been in that area.
Just take out the
No
line.
other, no other
Remove the
policy, no other policy
Yeah.
talks about the sending district
Okay.
and what
Oh, I
they
know what
vote
you
on,
meant. I
except for the
misunderstood you.
policy specific to the sending district.
Okay, so basically it should end after a roll call, blah, 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 blah. In the event no candidate receives a majority vote of the remaining board members, second election shall be conducted between the two candidates receiving the highest number of votes, period. The last 2 lines comes out. The last 3 lines, 1 sentence. Is that what you're saying, Ms. Gerby?
Yes.
Well, there is a policy about the sending and receiving district, but that's separate. It doesn't mention voting.
It does mention voting.
Not on vacancies.
Okay, so this is the only thing we have on appointment and election. If we remove the representative of the Jamesburg Board of Ed is not entitled to vote to fill a vacancy, if we remove that, then they are entitled to vote.
Or, I don't know, is it better to make it more specific and say they are entitled to vote?
I think the least amount
I
of
don't-
words you have. in policy
I
or
don't
bylaw,
think
the
that
more
you
you-
have to, I don't think you have to say anything in there because on all of our other things, on our business administrator, on our, all these policies, we don't have a line in there and the Jamesburg representative is entitled to vote because that is all under the sending district policy.
So if we just remove it, it ends there. It's an assumption that anybody on the Board of Education votes.
Okay. In the event no candidates receives a majority vote of the remaining board members. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put, so what it's gonna look like is this policy is gonna be for a first read, if that is what Ms. Alvarez is shaking her head, yes, right? Yes.
You know, it'll give the public an opportunity to comment.
Right, so what we'll do is it'll just say revise and it'll say the date, so in this case, it would be November 15th if it went through,
Mm-hmm.
2023, because it was reaffirmed in 2019. So does that make sense to everybody? Ms. Gerby, we're just gonna cross it off? Ms. Belko, Ms. Alvarez? Works for everybody?
When does a policy have to be reaffirmed?
I think reaffirm means they didn't change it.
Oh, okay.
I'm going
They
to
just have to
assume,
review it and.
I'm just assuming that's what it means. Does that make sense to you? Yes.
That's my first time seeing that.
Yeah, usually I only see revised or readopted. Yeah, I agree.
Well, we're not really sure
So-
what past boards did, so.
I don't know either. I'm just reading the very bottom of it and I see the words adopted, readopted, revised, and reaffirmed. That's the first time I've
Yeah.
seen the reaffirms.
Too, that's why I asked about
And
it.
to me, it's revised November 15th. That's what we would do. Because we're changing it.
Yes, we're revising it.
Okay, so it'll go for a first read for the November 15th Board of Education meeting.
Okay. Does
Ms.
anyone have
Gerby?
questions? Ms. Balco?
No.
You know,
Good.
that brings up an interesting point. That said reaffirmed, which means that they looked at it and just reaffirmed it, voted yes for it. You know, I bet they didn't even go back to, because if you remember in 2017, the courts extended the voting rights. So I wonder if they never even went back and had a discussion about what got extended, because there was very limited voting rights for ascending districts representative until 2017. So I wonder if they were just going through policies and looking at them and reaffirming them and didn't even have a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that's why, perhaps they didn't even pull that up when, I don't know what happened in 2019. I don't know why they would have reaffirmed it in February and allowed Paul to vote, except for the fact maybe they got legal advice that said he was entitled to vote.
Maybe.
Yeah, we don't know what went on behind.
But you're absolutely right. The bylaw should match the actions of the board, right?
Absolutely.
That makes sense. So that's why it's here, and I want to thank Ms. Alvarez for bringing it.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Alvarez, we're done, aren't we?
Yes, this was a short one. There's no
Yes.
alert this time.
Nope.
I
we
found
double-checked
out they
everything.
happen 3 to 4 times a year, not every month, like I
No,
thought.
and next month. is it?
So we're good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Skirby.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You're the only owl person here. Good night.
Night.
Ms. Alvarez?
Good night.
Oh, good night. Okay, good night.
Adjourn.